that to me is a bit of a Bob Myers imprint on this team. And it certainly flows mostly through Adam Peters, who believes many of the same things. It's not like Bob told him, like, hey, man, make sure you do this. And Adam was like, wow, I never thought of that before. They did a lot of the same stuff in San Francisco. 301-230-0980 is the phone number on a Vibe Check Tuesday. Let's get things started with DC. DC, thanks for calling on a Vibe Check Tuesday. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Great day, Hoffman. How you feeling, man?
I'm feeling great, man. I'm feeling fantastic.
That's good. I'm vibing high as well, man. I really appreciate you touching on, what Magic said and Josh Harris. But a lot of people forget about Bob Myers being hired first after he took a year to assess the league, find out what staffing and what he wanted his organization to be like. He hired Bob Myers first. He was selfless in doing that and wanting to build an organization the right way. And a lot of people don't know Bob Myers came from the Golden State Warriors, so I'm pretty sure those GMs and managers and owners mingled while they were out in California together. Then we hired Adam Peters, then we hired DQ, and so forth and so on, and we went and got the quarterback. So, our organization was built from the foundation up the right way, and that's creating the vibe that we feeling now, man. And I appreciate you speaking into existence of us winning the division championship game.
All right, man. Appreciate the call. And I love the Bob Myers shout, too, because I think that Bob, look, on the list of people that are important for the Commanders' success, is Bob Myers particularly high? In a way, probably not. But Bob Myers knew Adam Peters very, very well. They were obviously colleagues. They were contemporaries, if you will, out in the Bay Area, where Bob was building the four-time NBA champion Golden State Warriors, and Adam Peters was the San Francisco 49ers assistant general manager. They knew each other very well. They had talked sports before, talked ball before, if you will. They've talked about team building. They knew each other. That didn't guarantee that Adam Peters was going to get the job, but there was a certain familiarity and comfort there that it surely helped Adam feel good about Josh Harris. Adam Peters has turned down plenty of other opportunities. And so if you say that Adam Peters is the most important person, well, Bob Myers played a big role, I think, one, in the interview process of saying to Josh, hey, this is the kind of leader that you want if you want to build a championship organization. These are the things that we focused on. These are the things that we wanted to have as standards that go across sports, that are not just football or not just basketball. It's not like Bob Myers is like, hey, how do we shoot threes in football? That's not a strategic, schematic type of whatever that Bob Myers is bringing to the table. I'm sure Bob Myers, as a football fan, has thoughts on football, but he's not a football expert in the way that he is obviously a basketball expert. But there are things that cross sports that maybe are differing levels of important, because I do think an NBA locker room with 12 to, now it's 17 guys is very different than an NFL locker room with 53 plus the practice squad and whatever else. You're talking about 65 guys plus all the coaches and staff and everybody that's around the building. It's a very, very different dynamic, but they're both, once you add in the staff of the NBA, it feels like these teams have 20 assistant coaches now, plus their medical staff, plus everything else. There's 50 people in a traveling party. But you have these dynamics that are really important, and where your leadership comes from, the importance of the right veterans. I do think that the more I think about it, there are some Bob Myers imprints on this roster, Bob Myers fingerprints on this roster. Of course, finding your Steph Curry is a lot harder said than done, and they probably did that with Jaden Daniels. Sick. But Bob also was a guy that brought in a lot and always had around the right vets. And eventually guys like Steph and Draymond became those vets. And you could argue that at times Draymond was the right vet and at times Draymond was the wrong vet. And that was some of their problems, a la the Jordan Poole stuff that went down in such a horrible way. But having Andre Iguodala, Leandro Barbosa, there's been other guys, Jarrett Jack back in the day. They had guys at the start of their dynasty that were essential. And if you ask Steph Curry about them, you ask Klay Thompson, you ask Bob, you ask Steve Kerr, they will tell you those guys were so valuable, David Lee, to what they did in Golden State. Some of them were around long enough to get rings. And I realize that, their dynasty in some level starts in 2015 when Kerr gets there. But even some of the stuff they did under Mark Jackson, like that took, serious gumption for Myers to move on from a coach who was well-liked and well-liked by a star player. And some of the guys that had been there were really, really important to the habits that were formed. And then Kerr took it to a whole new level, and Steph obviously grew into being Steph and the whole deal. But the more I think about it, Bob Myers, as we think of all the people that are responsible for their success this year, Bob Myers is a good shout, because while day in, day out, his importance is probably not very high, the most important people that are in place are there because he was one of the first, if not the literal first, chronological move that Josh Harris made last off season. I remember waiting on the text and waiting on the tweets and all that kind of stuff for Rivera to get fired and getting the Bob Myers one first and being like, whoa. And Rick Spielman too. Shout out to Rick Spielman. But I think Myers clearly on the long term was someone who they were more keen on keeping around, and I'm sure he's been a good sounding board for Adam and for Josh and for others around that organization this year. But to have as I actually was talking about this to preview tomorrow's conversation. I was talking about this with Vince Wilfork a little bit earlier today. Again, you'll hear that interview tomorrow here on the Team 980. But I don't know how closely, I actually know that like he hasn't followed the Commanders day in, day out. He said he's watched quite a bit of them and loves the story and has been following along. But like he used the term brotherhood. He used the exact term and when he was talking about his old Patriot teams and how they played for each other. And he talked about how the veterans that were there when he got there were guys that he had grown up watching. Like he had so much reverence for Willie McGinnis and so much reverence for Teddy Bruschi, guys that had been in the league in that first Patriots dynastic run that were still in the primes of their careers in the case of most of them, but could bring a young guy like Wilfork along to be what he was pretty instantaneously. And I look at a team like the Packers, who has the youngest roster in the league when weighted for number of snaps. One, I think they're the youngest roster in the league anyway, just pure average age, but certainly snap weighted, where they just don't have a lot of experience playing anywhere. So take the number of snaps, multiply that by the age, and do the whole average, and Packers' youngest team in the league. And they're very good. But they do a lot of dumb stuff. Like, I got friends who are Packers fans, and they would lament, we are the dumbest team in the league. We cannot stop committing stupid penalties. We cannot, get out of our own way. Emotionally, we'll lose it in big moments. Think of the personal foul penalty late in that Eagles game. That kind of sealed. I mean, at that point, the game was probably over, but that was the end of the end. Erased all chances. That's kind of who the Packers have been all year. And Washington has avoided that because they brought in Wagner. They brought in Ertz. There's a maturity to this team. They brought in guys even like Dorrance Armstrong, who was with Dan and Dante Fowler, and those guys know what those guys are about. They know what the coaches are about. And so that, to me, is a bit of a Bob Myers imprint on this team. And it certainly flows mostly through Adam Peters, who believes many of the same things. It's not like Bob told him, like, hey, man, make sure you do this. And Adam was like, wow, I never thought of that before. They did a lot of the same stuff in San Francisco. One of the guys they brought to San Francisco to implement Kyle Shanahan's standard and help teach the other guys the offense and the way to go about their business as professionals is a guy named Logan Paulson. You might have heard of him. And if not, you'll hear from him at 5:30 and realize that he's really smart. Because I host a show with him a couple times a week. It's called Take Command. We're going to play a little bit for you coming up at 5:30. But like it reaffirms that those things are the right things, I guess is the simplest way to put it. So that's a great shout from DC on the phones at 301-230-0980. More of your calls on a Vibe Check Tuesday next.
This is the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.